because we get some backstory. We'll get to it, but we meet the big bitch herself in these episodes. The witch shows up. The witch shows up.
The witch shows up.
Oh my God, it's KHANTENT! Can you believe ReZero Season 2? We actually watched all of Season 1. You were there with us every step of the way. We went from, wow, this sucks,
Yeah.
maybe it's not the worst thing I've ever seen.
It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I famously got Rem-Pilled, and everyone enjoys that. But beyond that...
It's really funny for you to say, like, I famously did this, because, like, we
in
recorded...
the future.
Yeah, well...
I'm referencing events that have not happened yet.
Well, it did happen.
It's begun to happen in the comments.
Yeah.
But the next one...
The Rem-Pilling gets even harder, is what you're saying, as the videos come out. We've released, like, up through episode 16 so far.
Yes,
but we're now watching Season 2. We've watched the first 5 episodes, and we're here to tell you all about our impressions of them. How did you feel starting off Season 2 of ReZero?
Well, here in our brand spanking new, built by us, KHANTENT Studio TM, that you can fund for $10 or a different amount, but you should do $10 on subscribestar.com/KHANTENT.
We here at KHANTENT are working with Studio Ghibli to let you know that one of my personal favorite films of all time, The Wind Rises, from Hayao Miyazaki, is now available for digital download.
You can get it along with 5 other Ghibli films: Nazca in the Valley of the Wind, Castle in the Sky, Porco Rosso, Arrietty, and The Cat Returns, all available now. And if you order it on Apple TV, that's $20 off, baby.
They're also available on Blu-ray and in stores now, so get on it. These movies are amazing. So make like the wind and rise to the occasion.
Or make like the Nausicaa and of the wind of Ghibli movies, available now. Go buy them, everybody. KHANTENT!
Back to the show.
I didn't love it. It kind of returned to its old bad habits of meandering and going on and having a lot to say, but not much in what was said.
I would say there were 2 words that I would use to describe this.
Fuck you.
Those words are contrived and convoluted. Because ReZero at its best is complex. You've got like all these princesses and all this shit going on. They've all got like different cultures they come from that inform their decision making, you know. Like that's when I think about like what I want from ReZero, it's like I want to see more of this world. I want to learn more about all these interesting characters we've been introduced to. And then I don't. Continually, I just don't learn about anything that seems interesting. And
well,
instead,
hey, we meet some of the new, like the gluttony and the what's the other one?
So,
gluttony.
yeah, can we talk about that? I thought we
Sure.
already met Gluttony and fucking Greed before. Why are we meeting them again?
Okay, I think what they're doing, and now this is covered, I believe, here and there in the episodes here. I think what they're doing is they're creating a dichotomy, or at least like a time differential, because we get some backstory. We'll get to it, but we meet the big bitch herself in these episodes. The witch shows up, although she doesn't have the name Satella that we've been told. Her name is Echidna. So, okay, I don't know why that name is different, but she witch pills us on how the witch of envy, her, I think, like consumed the other witches of the other sins, or gained their power or something. And then we're being told about how there are, what is it, the code of the witches? There's the witch factor.
You're explaining this stuff to me, and my mind is just on all the branding I'm already doing with witch pilled as my new thing. I'm just going to start witch pilling people. I'm going to have witch pilled t-shirts.
Well, listen, so I think what's going on is they're giving us a little backstory, and they're trying to say that there were other witches with powers, and now those powers exist in like tangible form that some of the people on Earth have now. And maybe she's responsible for giving those powers. Famously, of course, is Betelgeuse, who we fought last time.
Because that was the thing. It seemed to be that like we were under the impression that Betelgeuse was the representative of Sloth, and that the white whale was the representative of Gluttony.
Yeah.
Now it seems like they were just like minor agents of even bigger guys who do those things under the witch. It just feels like maybe, I don't know, the author like had already kind of like was like, ooh, maybe I don't want to have already like gone this far, because I remember us being like, oh, we're already 2 out of 5. Like, these are the final bosses, right? And now it's like, oh no,
No. We've got a whole new thing to get through.
So,
Incidentally, speaking of reusing things, I pointed out that, okay, episode 1, kind of the emotional arc, now that the battle is won and the last arc is over, our new issue is that Rem is forgotten. And we're like, what? That was a thing. See, this is the thing. That was a thing with the whale. The whale could make you be forgotten from history and whatnot. And Subaru remembers he's the only one. He's a special boy. Okay, fine. But now we meet, so that was something to do with Gluttony the whale. Now we meet, like, the human Gluttony man, and I was thinking...
He's a weird thing.
And seems to, like, have that same power as the whale. And when I was first watching, I thought, well, isn't this stupid? They just got rid of an antagonist that had this power. Right. So now they're introducing another antagonist with the same power, effectively. But as you said, they are both gluttony-pilled. Right. So is there a connection there? Maybe.
All pills here on the KHANTEHNT show.
Massive pilling is
Big
going
time
on.
Pill pushing. Yeah, like the fucking. Oh, give me a sec.
Hey, we got all the time. We can cut. We can do any kind of thing we want with all these cameras. It's fantastic. Here on the subscribe.com/KHANTEHNT funded set that we made.
These two, so the two guys show up, they're the new villains, they cut up all these guys, they make a big edgy entrance and they fuck, it's like, oh, all these guys who just fought the whale and had this like big honorable moment, fuck all them. Schooled. Nobody who matters, of course, because...
Of course.
Because you'll remember at the end of the previous season, all of the characters who we cared about in the whale battle, they're obviously not around. But characters who we do care about are here, but none of them are killed, but 2 of them have some kind of memory thing happen to them. So,
and as I said, isn't it convenient that just in time for his loving reunion with Emilia, Rem has been literally forgotten from everyone's mind and is in a coma. So we don't need to deal with any of the ramifications of the double timing, 2-timing piece of shit Subaru.
I mean, season 2 basically starts, she gets into a fight where she basically reifies the position she's at in the story right now, which is, I love Subaru, that's my thing, it's all I care about, that's my character.
If you had any doubts, dispel them.
So
that's
it's
going
like,
the distance.
If Rem is to have an arc, it would be to progress her beyond this point. But this is where they need her to be.
Sometimes you hit perfection, and then there's nowhere to go. You gotta stay right
her out,
there. Yeah.
Leave her alone for a while.
Sleeping Beauty.
Let's not think about Rem, because they can't write her out and have people not think about her. She's too popular. She has to be like literally unconscious for you to not be asking, what's Rem doing right now?
There's nothing wrong with establishing like what Rem's doing in the story right now that has her away from Subaru. Unfortunately, that thing is being unconscious on a bed while other characters do stuff. It's fine. It's fine.
Sure.
I guess.
So
it's
like,
cliched as fuck, but it's fine.
I'm just thinking about how like, so the arc, this episode 1 of season 2 is all about Koosh and Felix.
Koosh?
Koosh, isn't that her name?
Krush-sama.
Krush.
That sweet Koosh, man.
Krush and
Rem.
No, Felix. The cat boy.
Felix, yeah.
Yeah, Felix Nyan Nyan. I always want to call him Felix Nyan Nyan. That's from Steins Gate. Felix Nyan Nyan.
Oh.
Practically the same character. They act the same way.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so that whole episode is dedicated to like Koosh has lost her memory and the big emotional turnaround, which this is probably the best actual thing relevant to the plot that happens in these 5 episodes, is that Subaru, he finds himself in a position where like Rem's fucked up, everybody's fucked up. He actually kills himself to try to reset, as we've been suggesting.
I felt his fear, his terror. I was right there with him. That was a solid moment.
He kills himself, and wouldn't you know it, he finally has reached a save point that is beyond his ability to change something.
So we've now hit that thing we've been waiting for of, he seems to have no control about when the save states activate or go, so now he can't just go back and have a get out of jail. He has to
It's interesting too, because I expected this to eventually happen where like he fucked up and then couldn't recover it, and then he'd be like haunted by that. Instead, it's kind of introduced in more of a benign way where it's just sort of like, well, it was a situation he couldn't have done anything about anyways. He just wasn't there. These guys just showed up, fucked a bunch of shit up, And
Yeah.
when he reset, he is not in a position to do anything about it. So it's just like, okay, well, I guess we're going forward from this. Is Rem is forgotten, and Kush has forgotten her own memories. So, you know, which is probably the darkest thing that happens because of the fact that right at the end of the season, she'd given this huge speech to Subaru about how she'll never forget what he's done. And
That was a beautiful
he's like
moment.
the most important person in the whole world. She doesn't remember any of that having happened.
But the thing is, that only matters if you think that's going to last, which it
Right.
obviously won't.
Right. Well, and what we get out of the character as well is that, you know, Felix is like, let's call off the alliance because working with these people is going to lead to shit like this happening. You know, like it's just going to incur the witches to come after us even more. And she's like, just based on the information at her disposal right now, basically having no idea who she is or where she is or what the hell's going on. Just like based on, you know, the way people seem to regard her, I guess. She comes to the conclusion, no, I probably should still be in this alliance. I'm sure it's something I wanted, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Still on brand. And Felix is like, wow, you're still on brand even without your memories. I'm so happy. Like,
she's still herself. But of course, that reminds me of the issue I had with this situation. So Krush has been memory wiped personally. And apparently there are other people in a similar situation. Rem, who is in the exact same boat, has been both presumably memory wiped, but is also unconscious, and of course no one else remembers Rem.
Yeah.
They were both defeated in battle and were at the mercy of their enemies.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, she must be dead. But of course we found out that no, this other thing happened. Why are they in two different situations? Presumably, they just ate more of Rem than they did of Krush.
Well,
Why?
you see-
Why is there a difference between the two?
So at one point, the author was like, that idea of having Rem getting disappeared was really good, but I could have come up with a better way of doing it. I could have made it so there were two different things that gluttony could do. They could either make you forget your own memories or make everyone else forget you. And this way, I can have two different things happen instead of one thing. And so I'll have two different things happen.
But why?
Why, in the mind of Gluttony, did he create this scenario?
Why?
I'm sure it's all according to Keikaku.
There's no way this is going to make any sense. I mean, okay, maybe Gluttony has two different powers and just is like, I'll use this one now, I'll use that one now. It just seems like...
I'm sure it will make sense in the sense that there will be a reason narrative, like
No,
that.
no, there won't be. Gluttony, the sin of gluttony just felt like showing some restraint with Krush. Gluttony chose to do that and, you know, went sicko mode with Rem.
Well,
No!
they needed her to have, they needed people to be able to remember her because they needed her to maintain her seat of power in order for their plans to continue going to fruition.
Okay, maybe guided by Greed, who was also there. Greed was like, now hang on, Gluttony, you can't go that hard on this. We have to make sure people remember who Krush. There's no way that conversation is going to happen.
I'm just saying, I won't be surprised if there is an answer. It just won't be any more satisfying than none of this ever having happened. Like, I think that's what gets to me with ReZero is like sometimes we'll complain about certain things and someone will be like, well, it does matter like 8 books later when this thing happens. And I'm like, yeah, but like it only ever happened so that could happen later. And I don't care either time, you know?
I mean, look, with something like that, sometimes it comes down to taste and if you like the thing that was done there or not. You know, famously, you hate like mystery stories. Some people just like being taken for a ride. Okay, that's fine. I can understand something like that. With this, my issue is like mechanically. What's going on in the world? This seems to not make sense. If it does, okay, and then it's a separate question of if added to the story or not. But we'll find out in time. I will wait patiently like a good boy. But see, the problem is when I wait patiently like a good boy, a lot of the time just no answer comes, and then the time never comes when we get to address Nate's concerns from 10 episodes ago. And then I'm just sitting there with my dick in my hand and no jizz on the floor, and I'm sick of it.
It's deeply enraging to me when I read people say things like, oh, well, like, it's a shame that it's not going to actually get to the interesting part until, like, after season 2. Like, after what would be, like, 70 episodes of anime adaptation is, like, when the light novels supposedly get into the really interesting stuff. And we really see the payoff of all these characters that we've established. And it's just kind of like, when you get to that destination built on a base, like, this show when I say like contrived, convoluted, like it just feels like it's making up scenarios to let the plot happen. You know, where it's just like everything that happens in episode 2 is characters having conversations about the fact that they need to go to the sanctuary. It's just
in all possible combinations and in redundant ways. And I was talking about how I fucking hated Beatrice's conversation with Subaru, where he walks in to talk to her and she just says, I can't tell you, go talk to someone else, but in a way that somehow took like 10 minutes to get across, which was truly baffling. And then they do, of course, go talk to the new yellow maid, Frederica, and she does have all the information.
I guess what was established by the conversation with Beatrice is that she knew, what's his name?
Ross
Beetlejuice. No, she knew Beetlejuice.
She did know Beetlejuice, which is interesting.
And she was like seemingly upset that Subaru had killed Beetlejuice.
Yeah, that's right.
It seemed like. So she was like basically mad, I think, that he keeps coming to her for answers even though he like doesn't appreciate the actual consequences of what he's doing to her personally.
Sure.
That's what I think was emotionally trying to be got across in the scene. It was just so long and winding. And like the point of the conversation literally was just like, go to the sanctuary. Like, well, why was Roswell not around? Go to the sanctuary and ask him. You know, like, just go to the sanctuary. Like, the conversation for the whole episode is just people talking about going to the sanctuary. And then, like, it's at the very end. They finally go, and it's just like...
They do go.
Couldn't we have just, like, gone? Like, we knew this was where we were going from, like, minute 1 of the episode.
See, a lot of people...
It just feels like I'm being impeded, you know, by the dialogue. It feels like the dialogue is holding me up.
People defend the show, and they say in our takes, they've had a lot of criticisms of our points like that, but I really defy anyone to watch this episode and tell me that this was an efficient use of the time, because what was really gained? Some background information about Beatrice.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's just that the stuff that is of interest in the show is deliberately, again, like diluted down as long, like that episode felt like it took as long as it possibly could. Like every conversation, like as though someone sat down and asked themselves, like, okay, here's how the character's gonna ask the question and here's the answer. How many sentences can I fit between that of like banter, of them like deconstructing the actual words one another are saying back and forth?
Yeah.
Or like just making up like plot holes to cover, basically. Just like having characters say things like, oh, well, it's a good thing we did this because that would have happened if we hadn't. And it's just like, okay, who cares? You know, like, are you setting up for something? Is that going to happen later now? And if so, I still don't care. Like, it just feels like everything is either completely useless or just there to set up for something that's going to happen, you know, in the conversations, I mean.
I agree. Okay, but while it sounds, I mean, I didn't love these episodes, but it wasn't all bad because at the end of episode 2, we do go in head trippy as they go through the barrier, something's going on. We do meet Enkidu.
It's the one.
Estelle. What's her fucking name?
Echidna.
Jesus Christ. Echidna, thank you. And the conversation with Echidna was illuminating and revealed a lot of information about lore and stuff that we had questions about. Not everything, which is fine. I don't need everything revealed, but like, this is a big deal. This is the witch, and we're moving the plot along, and thank God for that. Season 1 felt like a whole bunch of meandering around a few basic points, which is understandable. You're setting up your characters, and you're getting to know things, and then we got to the actual, what mattered of, like, the dragon priestess stuff, which took up very little of the runtime, and there was, like, witch battles going on. That stuff was more interesting. Okay, fine. But now, we've met her, we know things about her, and thank God for that.
Her personality is she's mysterious.
She's mysterious.
Ooh. She likes to show up and tease Subaru with how mysterious she is.
She's a little bit jocular. She likes to joke around and meme and post on reddit.com for epic golden upvotes.
I mean, there's a little bit of like a thing where it's like she kind of wants everything to be like kind of dramatic and pretentious, and he kind of like is not having it, and she's like, but you don't, like, why don't you want to play with my tea time?
You know?
But, like, it was also really frustrating because okay, the witch just shows up to have tea with Subaru. Is this in his mind? Is this real? We don't know. We have no context to understand if this is like actually the witch actually visiting him.
True.
It's the first time she's appeared in the series. It's literally a head fuck thing that he just got into when he walked into this temple.
Yeah, no.
So-
no. He didn't even go through the temple. He just crossed the barrier the first time he sees her.
So he comes through, and she's like, hey, it's me, the witch. Let's talk about whatever you want. And
Yep.
he's like, nah, I don't want to. And he storms off. And she's like, well, you don't have any questions for me? And we're like,
We have many questions.
don't you have any
all
questions for her?
kinds.
Like, why is this his reaction at all?
Let's break that down. So, in the one sense, there are elements of his conversation with the witch that I did like. For the first time, his quirky personality was kind of working for me in juxtaposition to this like witch who's like, she's the antagonist. You want him to kind of like give her shit and not just play her game. I kind of liked it on that level. The fact that like she's like, ooh, I made a witch's brew, and he just goes and chugs it. I was like, okay, I respect, that's stupid, but it's kind of funny and cool that you would do that, sort of. But then, at the end, exactly as you said, this all builds to, like, this is a question and answer session, what do you got for me? And he just has no questions whatsoever, which I don't even believe he would do. And the reason we're supposed to think that he does that seems to be because he's so desperate to get back to Emilia. And he doesn't want to give her the satisfaction. Those two things. His obsession with Emilia is well documented.
Like, where does he think he's going? Like, what does he think he's doing? How is he escaping the scenario? Just ask her the questions.
There's no reason not to ask.
There's got to be something you need to know.
This is the guy who has had no one ever to talk to about his deep secret about how he can't talk about the return by Zero. He finally has the witch here. This seems like, he said, like, it's the witch is the one who comes to me and fucks with me. Look, even if she's your arch nemesis, there's no reason not to, like, try to communicate, at least so we, the viewers, don't feel frustrated just from a meta perspective. Yeah. Please do something. And luckily, okay, it wasn't even at this point. It's later on we get some more answers about what's going on from her. But I don't know. At least we got to meet her. That was something.
So before we move past episodes 1 and 2, I'll read some other notes I had about those. There was a line where Emilia says to Subaru, I think it's her, where she says, like, if your spirit keeps trying, your body will give up first. Because he's like saying he's like watching over Rem's bed, and she's like, you should go to bed. And he's like, well, I'm not doing anything that would make me tired. And she's like, yes, but your spirit will tire out, and your body will give because, or your body will give before your spirit, I guess. So you got to nap.
Okay.
I always appreciate characters telling people to sleep, because you should not stay up too long.
That's true.
There's a line at the start of episode 2 where Emilia says, this I thought was fucking hilarious. She's like, you always come and sit right next to me like it's nothing. It used to make me uncomfortable, but now it would make me uncomfortable if you didn't do it. And I'm like, that's literally Stockholm Syndrome. Like, he just did something that made her uncomfortable until she liked it.
That's not fair. That's not true.
That's no different from those hentai where you just, you know, where she just likes it eventually. You know, I don't see any difference.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see any difference either.
But yeah, like, just overall, every time we go into a new arc with this show, it's like, because you're at the start of a new book, there's always that long, slow lead-in period. It's always like all the characters just kind of hanging out, having conversations, dicking around as they like establish what this arc's going to be about. And with this show, because of the fact that, like, sometimes you get an arc that starts in the capital and there's tons of characters and conversations and, like, there's ramifications that are far-reaching. And, like, really, season 1, like, a bulk of it was just dealing with that one situation, just trying to get past Betelgeuse. So, like, with that resolved, it's kind of like, you either have the option of going back and picking up one of the other threads that has been opened up during that time, like one of the other candidates or one of the other just random people we've met, other things we've heard about that happen in the world. But instead of doing that, it goes and kind of is like, let's do something new. And we get all these new characters introduced. And it just feels like we're at a stage in the story of ReZero where we should be basically constantly increasing in complexity, where there should just always be like more ramifications for what's happening, you know? But instead, we've kind of narrowed out the cast to just focus on like our main characters for a while. Even then, some of them are in a coma. So it's like this arc, we've basically gotten it down to just like our couple of main characters and then a bunch of new characters. And so it's like, well, all right, are the new characters interesting? How do they stack up to the huge amount of cast that we're not seeing who could be here? And they are totally uninteresting and don't do anything. Like, we got a new maid who's got shark teeth. We've got Beast Boy, who's the half beast from the Beast Village. We've got a lolly elf with pink hair.
We're giving more time to the little girl from the village,
the little
Petra.
girl from the village, Petra. None of these characters do anything. They just show up and are characters now, and it's like, all right, well, what do they do? Who are they?
Well, this character is good. I'm glad to have her around.
I mean, she was already a character.
Yeah, that's true. They just revealed her finally.
Right, and her presence in the show is welcome, I suppose. But like, the maid, the new maid,
she did nothing. She didn't even have a good personality. You know what's weird with her? She kind of acts just like Rem and Ram, but I suppose that makes sense because she is a maid, but it doesn't seem to, I mean, maybe this is just my trope senses going off, but she doesn't seem to fit that. She's got shark teeth. She's got like a big, like One-san energy. Like in design, but her actual attitude is just like, I will stand there quietly, I will exposit when asked, I will do nothing. Like,
she
honestly,
has done nothing.
The most character she had was the first moment we see her and she smiles and we get that shot of her shark teeth. I was like, I'm excited to see this character do stuff. Complete flatline. Maybe she'll be improved.
Is she strong? Is she is she related to anybody else that in an interesting way? Does she have powers or connections? She's just there. So she's there, and then like again, they go to the village, they see Lolly Elf in like episode 2, I think. Episode 2 or 3.
The end of episode 2, yeah.
They see her, and I'm like, okay, another character. And then she like doesn't show up in episode 3, and then she's back in episode 4. Still, we don't learn anything about her. She just exposits. And then you got Beast Guy. He at least has a personality, which is that he's the screamy Bakugo fucking accelerator voice guy who is obnoxious as fuck. He just screams a lot. He wants to fuck Ram. That's based, I guess.
That's fine. At least that's something. That's a desire from a character is being expressed.
But he doesn't do anything. Like, he gets into a obvious misunderstanding fight briefly with Subaru, and that's it. Then
I kind of have a feeling some of these characters will get to do something. Like, he might be the guy who, that knight fought with Subaru against Beetlejuice last arc. Maybe this guy will be the guy who teams up with Subaru against the next guy. I mean, he hasn't done it yet, but
I just, before this criticism even comes up, I have to address it, because I know somebody's going to say, like, well, you know, the characters were just introduced. They haven't had time to do anything. They should be introduced doing something. Introduce the characters doing something, and I will care about them immediately because I care about what they're doing.
That's how, like, Emilia was introduced. She immediately shows up and, like, helps Subaru, and you're like, oh, yeah, you know, I like Emilia.
Just, like, literally, she could have just been even, like, I don't know, cooking dinner, and, like, they come in and they're like, oh, what's this? And she's like, oh, this is the dish of my people or whatever. And they eat it and like, oh, it's spicy. And she's like, oh, we eat spicy food because we're beasts. Like, that'd be something.
That would have been
Nothing happened.
That would have been better.
There was nothing at all for any of them.
She was a repository.
They had dialogue, but none of it told me anything about them.
Yeah.
They're just pictures on a screen to me right now.
See, your point about new characters, it very much feels like the author was like, okay, we've covered these characters. Time to, you know, put the ones aside we don't need and address some new ones because we have to spice things up.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've gotten there. I guess it's just open to, we'll find out if it's handled well or not.
Maybe one of them will do a thing one day.
It's possible.
Hopefully die.
Based.
Well, I guess we should talk about the whole Parents episode now.
I was going to say, there were 2 other important characters introduced, and they were the 2 best characters. Well, one of them was one of the best characters introduced. The other didn't do much for me. Anyway, so they're going to do this trial. So the setup is, there's a trial that, we didn't talk about this. So in the sanctuary, it's actually called the Witch's Graveyard. What does that mean? Not quite clear yet. We'll find out one of these days. And within the borders of the sanctuary are trapped half-breeds. All half-breeds are trapped on the inside. Non-half-breeds can come and go as they please. This is made explicit. And like all the villagers and our characters from the last arc, from season 1, were brought there to be protected so they'd be safe.
Yeah.
This doesn't actually sound like a very safe place for them, and now I'm questioning that entire plan to bring them here. That sounds way more complicated than just having them hide in the woods for a while. But okay. And now literally the half-breeds that are there are holding the humans literally hostage. Their lives are being held hostage because they could just leave. Our characters are being forced against their will to help the half-breeds break the curse of this location so that they can escape. That's why they're doing the things we're about to describe. Okay, but conveniently, Emilia is a half-breed, so they'd have to do it anyway. So was there even a need to hold all these humans hostage? No, but that's what they're doing anyway. How fascinating.
So we can get the scene where the villagers learn to like Emilia again. This show can get really confusing with the timeline sometimes, where I'm like, I don't remember which things did or didn't happen exactly. Because like, I'm pretty sure there was a scene at the end of the last season where they're like evacuating the village and nobody trusts Emilia, and then Subaru's like, trust her, and they're like, yeah, we do now.
That got them to a level of like tolerance, and I think now we're going to the level of like positivity.
But okay, so this is the scene though, right? Subaru and Emilia walk into this like church where all these people are, and all of them are excited to see Subaru. They're, oh, Subaru!
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, dude, don't even worry, I'm here. And they're like, you're gonna do the trial, right? You're gonna save us. And then he's like, actually, I got one better for you. Emilia walks in, and they're all like, Emilia?
A woman doing a trial? I've never heard of such a thing.
And I'm just like, I mean, are they like not confident she can? Are they
I think
just
they still
not
hate her. They're still
appreciative
racist.
of, she's literally offering to do this thing that they need her
Well,
to
let's
do
talk
to
about
save
that.
them.
They do not need these people's permission to do anything. They could just go do it. Why are they even coming here to like get these people's approval to go do the trial? I guess it's because Subaru does know the villagers and does like hang out with them and like them, so he's just coming in to check in on them regardless.
Right.
But the whole rigmarole of like, it's Emilia, just feels very affected. It didn't have to happen. It's just...
Well, and every scene with the villagers who it feels like the show wants us to care about, or at least maybe it just wants us to care about the fact that the characters care about them. But it's just
It wants us to care about the amorphous blob that is the villagers, of which right now no known characters exist within that blob.
There's Chief.
Well, we learn of the existence of everyone's favorite NPC character, Chief, the old lady who apparently runs the show.
It's Chief's mom, Chief. Chief's dad and mom are both Chief, it turns out.
I guess so. This is news to us, but cool. Anyway, look, whatever. They have a scene. They like Emilia now, fine. They're gonna go do the trial, and so they go do it. Emilia goes to do this trial, and Subaru sees that she's in distress, and he's like, of course, I said, there's no way. Knowing that this is directed at a young male audience, there is no way Subaru's just gonna let a woman go competently handle a situation. It can't happen in this. And seconds later, she like passes out and he runs in to go save her. Maybe she'll do something correctly eventually. Not yet, but one of these days, maybe it'll happen. And of course, so Subaru shouldn't be able to enter. He's not a half-breed. He can't do the trial. But we saw previously he's been given the mark of the witch, so he can do it. So he's got more plot superpowers. Okay, fine. And what shape does the trial take? But you reliving your past, and so we get the big return to Tokyo or whatever flashback kind of episode.
We learn what Subaru's real life was like, and it turns out that his parents were basically overly doting.
Yes, too positive.
His dad is like a super like bodybuilder guy who's like just ready to fucking go all the time.
He's a happy
Maximum
kid.
energy, yeah. And then the mom is kind of like I can't describe her as anything other than an autist because that's just how it felt to me.
She has shockingly little personality for kind of the focus they gave her, you know, in addition to the dad.
Like her thing is kind of just like,
She's kind of just
she's kind of like airheaded and strange, you know? Like she's just presented as like weird, like just kind of a weird person.
Clearly, like Subaru's weird like mannerisms are supposed to derive from the mom, and his weird reactions to things, and his like gung-ho-ness comes from the dad, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, so this whole episode, it's very weird to even think and talk about because of the fact that it has almost nothing to do with the plot of ReZero, other than that it's the backstory of Subaru.
It comes out of absolutely nowhere. That's true.
So like, I always thought we'd get the backstory of Subaru, but normally in shows like this, when you get a character's backstory, it's like maybe the whole book, the character will be like, you know, having this one issue over, like, what he keeps like saying the same key phrase, and people are like, oh, why does he seem to be so like hung up on that thing? And then, you know, when he's at a low point, he's damaged, and he's like, oh, I'll tell the truth. It's all because I sucked Dad's dick, and then like, you know, and then we find out, and then he gets to it or whatever. In this, it's kind of like we have the memory stuff going on. So there is memory is relevant in this arc. People have lost memories.
There's no real connection to that, but...
And we just suddenly go into his fucking... It's just like you walked into the sanctuary, it's time to deal with your past, you know?
Yeah,
And I can't, like... I can't be too presumptuous about the intent of the story. I write stories. I know what goes into the stories I write. I know people who make stories. This felt like therapy to me. This did not feel like... This felt like the author finally being able to work through his emotions towards his parents and then like putting that in the story so the character could do it too before he moves on. Like, that was just how it felt to me, because it's like, it's so particular, like in that even though the parents, like, we don't learn anything about them or their lives, all we learn about them is their relationship to Subaru. How did they treat him?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like, the way that they treated him is, so, as we both said, was extremely relatable to us.
There were many different lines that we both at different times were like, well, first of all, we both enjoyed this section generally speaking. This probably was the highlight of this clip of episodes, for me anyway.
I would say I enjoyed it at first, and then it dragged on.
Well, that's an issue. But, and there were lines that we both, okay, so you know what? Interestingly, a lot of people have been talking in our comments, in our general thoughts of the show, that what they like about Subaru is that he does fail so much, because unlike, I don't know, like your isekai, like the cautious hero, as the extreme other example, who does everything right perfectly the first time and has no weaknesses and all that cool stuff, Subaru is relatable, and what people like about him is what a fuck-up weirdo he is, because he's supposed to represent like the lowest, least functional, like possible protagonist. But, okay, look, to that point, I would like to say, I love Welcome to the NHK, and I don't love ReZero. There's a reason for that. That is a far less functional human being than in ReZero. So, like, it's about the kind of story and the way you tell it. Okay, but anyway, moving on past that, the answer is, like, yes. A lot of this is very relatable. Subaru's fuck-ups in life make sense, and now that we're actually learning exactly what went down, some mysteries are still left open, but seeing the way that the parents interacted with the son was very educational as to why he is as he is.
I mean, and if the fact that we are currently, like, sitting in a makeshift toy-filled set talking about a cartoon from Japan we don't even like, obviously our parents didn't discipline us very well. So that's why we relate to ReZero, is we're like, you know, our parents also could have been harder on us, probably wouldn't have led to this.
The line that resonated the most for me was when Subaru said to his dad, "I wish you had kicked me out." Yeah. Basically, we've seen the scenes of the dad being incredibly positive. Subaru's like, "I'm not going to school today, Dad. Like, stop even pretending." And the dad doesn't bat an eye, has like no problem with his son, like not rising to the occasion or like trying to do these things. Because the dad clearly thinks, like, I'm a badass, my son's a badass in his own way, he's gonna figure it out. Meanwhile, I think the real issue with Subaru is that Subaru is not that exceptional, and he kind of needs a normal dad to say, "Son, you need to go do your job, you need to meet your obligations the way fathers normally do." I think a more normal life for someone like Subaru, who is more normal, as we like kind of painfully learn. I mean, we see the tale as old as time of, I don't know, people like me growing up. When you're young, you do really good, you kind of automatically succeed at stuff, but you don't really apply yourself. And so as you get older, you actually find yourself falling behind other people.
Yeah.
And as a result, Subaru loses confidence in himself. The dad is probably clinging to memories of his son winning the kindergarten foot race and being, wow, what an amazing child I had. Meanwhile, his son is like 16, hasn't been to school in like 6 months,
Right.
has no friends, no social life whatsoever, and is afraid to leave his room a lot of the time. Well, he doesn't have that, but bordering on it. Just living the neat lifestyle.
It's really interesting because, like, I mean, he's pretty much where I was in high school in that, like, I wanted to drop out very badly. I was not skipping school because I was too, like, afraid of the consequences of that.
But see, his parents removed consequence. They
Well,
didn't give a shit.
I don't know how it works in Japan because, like, here it's like if you miss more than 6 days of school, then you just fail the grade. And I was terrified of failing a grade. So like,
I don't know the technical, but I know that like in Japan, high school
even longer.
high school is definitely optional in Japan because it's like more of a premier thing, as I understand it. So like you probably, I mean, I was saying the dad's like, oh, you don't want to go to school? I don't think school is the most important thing, but like I'm a little frustrated at seeing, honestly, how bad a father the dad is being, or with like these same old failings, because,
Well, you know what the problem is? Give him something else to do.
well, that's, I was going to say, okay, don't go to school, get a job.
Right.
Contribute to your family and your household. Do not just sit in your room being sad.
Yeah, like, even though I find the parents relatable in their, like, attitude and the way that they treat him, like, mine would have at least said, go get a job, you know?
I think most would.
Like, my dad, like, I was in the position of knowing that my parents felt the way that his do about him, that, like, they will allow me to be a NEET in their house, but they do not want me to be a NEET in their house, and they're actively encouraging me not to be a NEET in their house, you know?
I think the other element, I mean, I think about this sometimes with my own life experience and watching shows like this, that, like, I think it's actively cruel to your children to not have high enough standards for them because you are allowing them to fail in life long term. And look, raising a parent is a complicated thing, I understand that, but like in my personal life experience, I am hyper tuned into that one issue. And like, I want to make sure that my kids do not experience that. Maybe I'll push them too hard and they'll experience other stuff, but I want to make sure that they are like held to a standard and know that like they can succeed and that there's things they can do in a way to specifically help them. And that is obviously what Subaru lacked. And I think the reason is because what we get with the mom scene later is the mom says like, oh, Subaru, you look healthier. Looks like you're not trying to be your dad. I think the shadow of the dad loomed so large over Subaru that it kind of crushed him, and also it's the dad's like belief that the son will be fine no matter what, that he's kind of blinded to the fact that the son is like, he says Subaru explicitly, he was crying out for help every day, doing bad things on purpose to get the parents' attention, literally to impose like rules and structure because he needs it so bad. This is like the tale of our modern era, and people are falling for this particular, I don't know, sin, I guess. Yeah. And it's sad. It's really sad.
I mean, it feels right that, like, okay, this is probably a pretty similar parenting situation to the people who relate with this show already, you know? Like, it is I guess it's the backstory that, like, it's just funny because, like, the way that Subaru is handled, you remember that, like, in the early episodes of our coverage, I was saying, oh, maybe he was, like, abused or something. Maybe he was, like, you know, had some kind of really, like, troubled backstory. And it's funny to think that it's kind of the opposite, but that it has the same sort of results. Because, like, I think that basically being somewhere in the middle of the extremes of like either do absolutely whatever you want or do exactly what I tell you, because like there's only so many things you actually can do in reality. Like people will tell you like you can do anything, but it's like, well, anything is a limited number of things that your human body can physically do. You know, like you can invent new arrangements of things that exist now and create something that's like new, but it's not literally new. You're not like forming matter out of thin air, you know? So like ultimately, like, if your parents are just basically giving you that kind of blank slate of just, like, do anything, do whatever you want, it's like, well, I don't know how to do anything.
Don't they say structure builds creativity, or having limits is a useful thing a lot of the time, and I think that's the blind spot of the parents. Right,
and I think that Subaru is in the mindset of because I think for a lot of people, they spend most of their life not really believing that they are exceptional, and then one day kind of having a revelation of I can do more than I thought. Oh, I thought I was just regular, and it turns out I can do at least this particularly well. And I think that there are some people who can do something particularly well when they're young, and so they already have it in their head, I'm special. And then they have a moment of, oh, actually, I'm not special. But then they eventually have they get back to, oh, but I can do this and this better than anybody else now that I've seen myself in comparison to other people for a long enough time.
And that's what Subaru does in this show. That's him getting over that. Yeah.
So it's, I guess that's an effective arc. It's this is the most I've felt I was literally just, we keep saying oh, this show seems like it's for teenagers. And it's this is actually the teenager I was. This is the teenager that would have appreciated this show that I was at some time. Though I don't think I ever would have really been into this show because it's so boring.
I mean, largely I agree. But this section, exactly. It's not that I can't understand teenage struggles. The Breakfast Club is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's pure melodrama of children. It actually reminds me a lot of Subaru's struggles here. But it's the way that the ideas are conveyed, and I don't know, the level of discourse that it reaches. And those episodes, that one episode, I guess, it does tap into something more interesting. That's a larger issue about how humans live, what our society is doing to us these days. That was pretty fucking good. So it was probably my favorite part of the show so far, except for maybe one or two of the emotional climaxes of season 1.
Shane had nothing to do with anything and came out of nowhere, and we'll never see his parents again.
That's true.
And it also went on too long.
Let's talk about that. How the dad section was the part where we really get over our issues with Subaru. We have the full emotional arc of dad goes on a walk with Subaru. They talk it out. Yeah. They really get over stuff, and we see an interesting split where, because this version of Subaru is experiencing this memory basically, with some idea of what he's accomplished in the ReZero world, that his love of Emilia, which is an okay motivation to get over things, I guess. There are better ways. I would like it to be his self-confidence, his belief he can achieve what he's trying to do. Yeah. But okay, fine. His love for Emilia fills him, and he's I do love someone, so Dad, you know what? I will go back to high school and believe in myself because there are things I can do. I made someone love me, or something like that. And that scene was good, cathartic. We have the big cry. But then we have just almost the same kind of scene with the mom, which they obviously felt an obligation to do, to not be unfair to the mom. But that scene, we had already covered everything in the first one.
And there's not enough different between them, where it's not he had different issues with each, or there was not really...
He didn't even have an issue with the mom. Yeah. The mom just a little bit further clarified the relationship with the dad. Yeah. Which, frankly, I think they should have done the mom section short
that's what
first.
This show is, though, is doing something and then clarifying it 17 times to make sure you get it.
Yeah.
He was having... I felt because he kept having heart grabs while he was in the... in the memory, yeah. And so it felt even more like the witch thing is a metaphor for a panic attack. Because seeing him do it in person, it's literally people are triggering him because every time somebody asks him why aren't you in school, or asks him about school, he's oh, I'm gonna fucking panic.
And I think he articulates that as that was me repressing my true feelings. And that's a memory specific mechanic that's happening. In real life that wouldn't happen. He'd just probably feel nervous or get upset.
See, this should have happened before he met the witch and been the justification for why he can now meet her. Yeah. It's oh, I moved past this emotion and now I can meet the Witch of Envy.
I agree, because the weird thing is the memory ends with him meeting the witch anyway, in a sexy schoolgirl outfit, which was awesome. But I'm way into this girl. She's sick.
Good.
She's my favorite girl of the show.
She's pretty great.
Design-wise. But anyway,
Oh, by the way, he had a poster of the Astra score in his bedroom.
Oh my God, he did! That was amazing! Yeah, and it's not even by the same company. It's probably just that it's the same publisher or something you were saying. Amazing.
Yeah. Bad taste inside of worse taste. No. Worse taste inside of bad taste. Anyway, okay. There's a part at the end of the whole flashback with the parents. He meets the witch, and she's teasing him about the fact that this is all an illusion. She gets up in his ear and she's like, oh, well, what if you just projected what you wanted your parents to be saying to you because it's an illusion and they don't really like you.
I thought that was an intriguing, interesting point. I was like, she says specifically, maybe you're just hearing from them what you want, but in real life, they never would have said these things. This was a little too convenient, right?
I mean,
which I agree with.
Yeah, that kind of thing is like that's like light novel bread and butter.
Actually, you know, can I just
it's
say,
like stuff, people saying things like that.
One other point about that was that those conversations with the dad were relatable, but we were saying at the time that, like, when I was a young, troubled youth, I had those conversations with my parents too, especially my dad, and it would, like, kind of help. But you know what? It's really easy after a big heart-to-heart conversation to just get lazy and not do anything. Right. A big conversation in real life does not necessarily translate to life change. Yeah. I'm going to totally turn myself around. No. And I, in fact, I mean, I feel bad about it even now. I had multiple of those ones about the same stuff and still didn't fix it.
That's another part of my cynicism towards a show like this is like, that is like the stuff that, like, when you're young, you get excited about that kind of stuff. Like, my dad was a big, like, take you aside, give you big speech, motivational, I'm going to go do it. But, like, when you failed after the big speech 4 or 5 times, it never has an effect on you again. Like, you in fact think, actually, big speeches are just to make you feel good about the idea that you're going to do something. But
I think that's a large reason
doing things is what gets things done, not talking about it. You know?
I think that's why teenagers kind of get jaded, because they go through this conversation with their parents a lot, but it doesn't magically transform their lives or give them the get up and go to change everything.
Because there's always some, like, anytime you hear, like, a motivational speech, like, it's motivating you on a broad level, but, like, in order to do something, you have to actually figure out specifically what you will do.
Indeed.
Like, the actual details of what will be done, you know?
It's a
Which in his case
plan.
is just go to school, because all he needed was just the motivation to believe that it could be valuable, I guess.
And this is
like,
convenient.
This would have been, for me, I go back to school, I spend a day back at school, remember all the reasons I hate school, remember that I am still the same person I was, and go back home.
And Subaru will go back to school. The other kids still won't like him. He'll still have no friends, be that awkward weirdo. He's got a reputation.
Everybody's talking about the fact that he hasn't been there for months, you know.
And, like, okay, sure, you could overcome all that, but we don't see him deal with any of it because we're back in ReZero Land. And look, that's all fine, but this is why, like, I really love Welcome to the NHK. And, you know, that show is a little bit...
Which makes fun of this, because the characters give each other big speeches that don't go anywhere, like, every episode.
And when you, just like you feel in NHK, it's gonna work this time, it just doesn't.
Right.
And even at the end of the show, when things are better, the demon of regression is, like, right there at any time. The NHK conspiracy is alive.
And I guess what I want to say there about that is, like, that show is about recursion, and, like, that's sort of what she's doing by saying, like, oh, what if your parents, like, what if you just projected your parents saying all that and they wouldn't have said that, right? Like, recursion is not deep. It is just you should think that way at all times.
It's just that we're not logical creatures all the time. We're emotional and weak and lazy and all kinds of bad stuff. Right. Logic doesn't always get through to us.
It's just like, I feel like there's a lot of light novels, like, okay, so Nishio, like, his light novels are all about these kinds of logic games and just, like, taking that to the furthest conclusion possible. So something like this to me is like paying lip service to that to be edgy, just like, ooh, but what if everything's not what you think and it's the opposite? And it's like, yes, thank you. Like, isn't that, like, the baseline of what we're operating on here with these stories? I don't know. It frustrated me that she, like, got up in his face and was all like, ooh, and I'm like, I don't care. He didn't even care. He was just like, actually, no, my parents would have said that, so, you know, joke's on you, Witch of Envy.
So that concept could be interesting if explored, but of course, Subaru's response to it makes sense for the kind of story this is, but is just, lol, did not read, too long, did not read. I just believe, like, his literal response is to her, like, what if it was an illusion and you just believe your parents were nicer than they actually are, is, my parents are so cool that I couldn't possibly have them all in my head anyway.
Yeah.
So this illusion was real? Okay, he's saying that there's no way this illusion even could possibly capture all of them anyway. Therefore, what they said has to be accurate? That doesn't make any sense. Someone explain this to me.
Like, I was thinking about when I was I got interested in tulpas once, and it was hard for me to believe in a tulpa because I was like,
For understandable reasons.
how could something in my own head know things that I do not know, right?
Yeah.
Now, it is possible for different parts of your mind to know things that other parts don't know if you have dissociated identities. But like, so maybe his mental image of his parents is so complete that he couldn't actually control it, is what he means to say. Is like his parents have left such a powerful impression that he couldn't possibly project onto it. Only it could project onto him.
That doesn't make any sense.
I'm trying. I'm really trying. I'm sorry.
I think that, like, okay, that is a fine, like,
They'd have to go over that for it to be like actually.
but they don't.
said.
That is like a fine, fairly decent and interesting, like, philosophical point that she has laid out to, like, challenge him. His response is basically that, like, I'm too stupid, so I'm not even going to think about the possibility of that. And you know what? Practically, that's fine. There's no need to obsess about it. Just take what works for you and move on. Yeah. But don't act like that's an answer to the question, because it's not. And it's insulting to act as if it though it is. I wish he'd given no justification and just said, fuck you. No.
So, like, I only have one note about episode 5 for one particular scene that happened. We'll probably go through it, but I have a few notes in general. Like, for instance, what happened to the setting design in this show? Because, like, one of the strongest things about season 1 was that you get all these, like, big wides of cities and you kind of knew where you are. And, like, they go to the sanctuary and, like, they're talking about it like it's this whole village, like there's all these people, but they only ever show us like 3 or 4 like dilapidated houses. It kind of looks like a ruin. Are people just living in ruins? Are like, we see so little of this place, and they keep talking about like what's going on, like, oh yeah, the people of the sanctuary have conferred and come to this conclusion. Which people? Like, where are they?
We had a
Show
good
me
like,
the people.
The village by the mansion, we had a pretty good sense of that. How many people were there? We saw shots, we saw the kids and stuff. In this, like, there were a couple of shots when the humans were being held hostage, basically. Yeah. We saw a bunch of, like half human, half beasts in the background or whatever that are clearly, like, the half-breed.
But they just look like they're supposed to be, like, emaciated, poor, living in, like, a shack, you know? Like, these are, like, the forgotten people or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, but then the beast guy is super strong. So I don't know, do they have super strength? Are they strong? Are they weak? Are they...
We haven't really gone into it.
Are they cool? Are they down with humans? We've not talked to any of them.
Plus, we haven't, like, differentiated at all between Francisca, whatever her name is, and her brother, who are half beast, versus being, like, half elf, or half anything else, presumably. Surely there are some differences between these things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't understand.
It just felt like a lot of the scenes in the village felt very claustrophobic. It felt like we were just... Like, there's these oddly framed scenes where everything's framed against the back of a forest. So it feels like you're always in the same corner next to the woods. Like, the same corner of the village, just looking at woods. Like, you don't... Why isn't there a shot where the camera's on the other side, and instead of looking at woods, I'm looking at the village, so I can see the village?
I think the answer to that is they don't have a design of the village, and they would have to, like, invent one, and that's a lot of work.
I guess so. I wrote Sakai Kyuta deserves to be a millionaire. Because I was just thinking about how everybody's got bigger tits this season.
They sure do.
It tends to be a thing. Anime adaptations just tend to keep growing the tits as they go. I assume it has something to do with marketing. I was thinking about how, like, all of the money this show has made is just on the basis of the strong character designs. And I'm sure that the character designer herself is not making any dividends off of that except for what she sells in art books. So all I'm saying is, stop buying ReZero stuff and just give your money to Sakai Kyuta. She's the one who did the character designs that you love so damn much. Because I don't believe that there's anything else worth loving about this show.
I still care for Rem. I have fond memories of Rem. Too bad she was in a coma the entire time.
I wrote down this show as a head pat. Like I'm just thinking about the doting parents and everything, and like the attitude of this show, which is basically just encouraging you, like telling you good job, like good job for busting your ass as hard as everybody else already is, you know, like your effort is being appreciated by all these cute waifus.
That's true, and I mean I gotta give it credit by going into Subaru's backstory in a realistic, modern way. That issue is delved into seriously, and I appreciate that. So it's not just paying. Clearly, they understand the issue that young men of this stripe deal with. Young women too, I'm sure, but whatever. And that was a little bit beyond. I'm like, that's not just a head pat. That's like a meeting with your counselor, a brief one, and then a head pat and sent on your way.
It definitely felt like therapy.
I had a quote from this episode that I said that's, I don't know what they're talking about or why it matters.
Yeah,
that was the quote for that
That was
episode.
when we were in episode 5 and we were like realizing, oh no, like we don't give a fuck at all because it became apparent that we had entered yet another arc.
Think about the stacks of why we're doing any of these things going on.
Yeah.
Literally, why are we here doing this mission in the mansion? Okay, plot point 1. Subaru is like with Emilia. Okay, they're like with Roswell. Why are they here? Because it's post a raid on the mansion where the witch cultists were attacking. The witch cultists are attacking the dragon maids, specifically this, or the dragon priestess, specifically this one because she looks like the witch or something. Like the humans are being held against their will here, and they have to save them all. But also there's a subplot of like the half-breeds are like trapped here and they need to be rescued as well. And then the witch herself, her grave is here and we have to like untangle her backstory. Is she even good or bad? It's not really clear yet. And all of this is like, you're supposed to care about all of this at the same time and be able
none
to
of
keep
it's
this in your head.
interesting.
And that's the real problem. Not one element of that is particularly compelling. I guess Subaru, like growing as a person and being with Emilia.
There's one scene that I thought was good. They meet with Roswell. He's all bandaged up. And Subaru is pissed off because he's like, where were you? Why would you leave me to handle this? And Roswell is basically like, well, I believed in you and you succeeded. And so like for Subaru, because of the fact that he knows he did not originally succeed, he knows that there is a version of this reality where everybody fucking died. But in the reality he's in right now, he did succeed. Roswell was right to believe in him, you know? I don't know if there's like any other dimensions being created by the failure.
Is Roswell seeing through the veil of time and space? Is that the implication here?
That could be possible.
There's
I would
another...
not discount that. Time-space magic's in this show.
True, and as you pointed out to me, we are seeing a bunch of connections between like Beatrice and the witch with her connection to Beetlejuice. What's that about? And obviously she works for Roswell. And Roswell seems sympathetic to
it seemed to be clarified
the
that
witch.
she... I don't know if they had said that she was a great fairy before. Had they clarified that? Because they call her the great fairy of the library in season 2.
Oh, Beatrice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think they clarified that.
Okay.
Whatever that means. I mean, okay.
Well, we know
fine.
Puck's a great fairy, so great fairies and big fairies, I guess.
And we talked about this. We'd heard that Roswell's motivation was he wants to kill the dragon. We don't know what that means. This is the kingdom of the dragon. They seem to be like enslaved to the dragon.
I'm going to assume Roswell wants to kill the dragon because the dragon is the reason everyone hates the witch, and he thinks the witch was the good guy all along.
Yeah.
I think he's going to die after they learn that and pass his will on to Subaru to be the one to kill the dragon to free the witch.
Okay, because here's the other thing. I think, based on our impressions of the witch so far, she sure is a little edgy and presents herself. She says, I'm a very, very evil person, or whatever.
Right.
They are the flags are stacking up that she's going to be redeemed. That this girl is not going to be a villain for the whole show. I think that's like end game. She becomes a good guy.
She also calls herself Boku.
Does she?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just to be
adorable.
cute, I guess.
Adorable.
Yeah, well, that was the one scene I liked just because, like, you know, obviously from Subaru's perspective, he knows that like he could have fucked it up, but at the same time he did do it right at this point. And it's like, you know, I feel like that's a frustration that people will always have sort of with like their commander or anybody trying to like anybody who could have done something but had to do something else, you know? And it's like, oh, well, I had to suffer because you weren't here. And it's like, well, because I wasn't here, I was able to do this, and you took care of it, so where's the problem, you know? And it's kind of like, that's what... I definitely think that, like, the underlying message of ReZero, essentially, which I do think is good, is, like, everybody is dealing with just as much shit. They just can't talk... Not everybody can talk about it, you know? Like, a lot of it is secret or is based on their past or just other stuff that they're dealing with that you don't know nothing about. I guess most shonen manga kind of has the same message as well. Because usually the bad guys, once you learn about their story, they become good guys, you know? But like...
That's true. That's true.
With this show, it's just kind of like... It's not even so much that like he's against these people, then he learns their story, now they're good guys. It's like they're actively trying to help him while keeping things from him. I guess it's like a shonen manga if there were not that many characters that were actually the character's age, if most of the characters were older.
Yeah,
you know?
sure. Mostly like tutors and stuff.
Right.
That reminds me a little bit of history's strongest disciple, Kenichi. He's like surrounded by these like martial arts masters, and they kind of get more of an arc than he does as we learn about their backstories and why they're so powerful. Right. And he has to kind of, I don't know, live up to their example.
But yeah, it's sort of like I guess I would call it a show about like entitlement and just like, which is obviously the biggest problem facing the type of people who grow up like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And the show is ultimately trying to tell you, like, hey, you know, the world is just going to keep expecting you to do unreasonable things over and over again. You know, and there's even a scene where it almost felt like a metaphor for writing the book itself, where he says something. Subaru says something to that effect, just like, you know, that. Like, it's just always going to be a nonstop chain of you being asked to do another even more impressive thing. That's what it was when he was a kid. He was trying to get attention by just like acting out, but then he would have to act out harder and harder in order to keep people paying attention to him acting out, you know?
Right.
And it's sort of like society will ask you to do that. They will constantly ask you to give me another one, but even bigger or even better, you know?
But of course, the solution isn't just give up. That's not the solution. That's not going to serve you well or anybody else well. The solution is try to make it work as best you can and find your avenue to success.
And work with the people. Like, you know, if people are asking too much of you, be like, okay, well, here's how much I actually can do.
Yes,
so, like, we need more people or whatever, you know? Like, being able to figure out how to answer, like, when somebody just tells you, like, do everything, you have to be able to say, well, I can do this, you know?
Yeah.
And that's something you kind of learn with experience, I guess.
And, you know, during the big emotional talk with the dad, I believe, it was either the dad or the mom, there was another one of these excellent lines that I appreciate that I said, that right there is a great lesson that people should learn who are watching the show. And it was basically that it's not about being worthy of he says, I'm not worthy of the amazing friends I have that are helping me to be a better person. It's not about being worthy of them or not. It's that if I'm not worthy, I will make myself worthy of them.
Yes.
And that is just such a positive way to look at it. And that right there is the best of what Subaru is obtaining through this whole experience and is the right attitude to have in most things in life. So do that, kids.
Yeah. And also do that thing where you go to the
Subscribestar.com/KHANTEHNT and give us $10 for multiple bonus episodes and maybe other surprises that we'll let you know about in the future. Guess that's going to do it for this episode of KHANTEHNT.
Join us again on another ReZero Sunday. They're back. I don't know if they went anywhere,
I don't think
but
they left.
They might have come. I don't know if they went and came or where they are, but they're here now. So
join us next time. See you soon, everybody. Bye.